right, we are going to get started. I will call this Technical Advisory Committee meeting to order. If we can start with item number 2, the roll call and determination of quorum. Mr. Connor Anderson.
Matthew Lehane.
Here.
Paul Yellow.
Present.
Jamie Jackson.
She's on her way.
Osama Mead.
Here.
Kathy Coffey.
Here.
Adam Derrick.
Here.
Melody Fowler.
Here.
Amy Garbarini. Kate Gibson.
Here.
Christine Hefner. Leon Hughes. Cassie Lord.
Here.
Daniel Koenig. Online.
Dan Koenig's here, left TA.
Thank you. Stephen Miner. Nick Ruiz.
He's gonna be online. I don't know if he's right now online, but he did.
He's not currently, but if I
He
can't
emailed
pop in, I'll put it in.
He emailed and said he's ill and he will join online.
Okay. Bob Schneider. I see that he's online. Rodney White
Rodney is on his way.
on his way, okay. Capella Akbari. Lee Anderson. Mohammed Benamar. Chelsea Betas. Kimberly Cook. Mike Craig. Here. Brian Council. Shannon Fennell. Susan Gardner.
Here.
Todd Horsley. Jacob Paswick. Craig Pennington. Greg Reed. Joe Stansby.
We have one.
All
Amy walked in late.
Oh, okay, thank you.
right, awesome. Thank you. All right, so we'll move forward with item number 3, approval of the February 5th, 2024 Technical Advisory Committee agenda. This is an action item.
Motion to approve.
All right, do you have a second?
Second.
All right, any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Yeah.
Motion carries. Ian does not have a vote. We will move on to review of the January 22nd, 2024 Policy Committee meeting.
Sure. Okay, scroll down. We don't want that all that. So the first few items are all the consent agenda, and it's all the tip items, and all of those were approved. I think you know what they all are because you saw them all here before they went to the policy meeting. Scroll down, please. Right past those, yeah. So smart scale, we did the same presentation, I believe, for the policy committee as what we did here. So you've seen that. The SS4A corridors and project ideas. We again just showed what you've seen here, and now the actual report is out for you to comment on. The CMAC STGB update, we only showed what you'd seen at the last meeting, nothing new. The River Crossing Parkway alternative update, that's on the agenda today, so you'll see that again. The Stafford County letter of support that was approved for the raise grant, and the transfer of funds you recommended in your last meeting, so that was also approved here. So there's nothing in the actual policy committee agenda basically that you haven't already seen, so I'm not going to belabor that.
All right, awesome. With that, we'll move on to the public comment period. Comments and questions from members of the public are welcome at this time. Staff will also read any comments submitted by the public prior to the meeting. Do we have any prior comments submitted? All right, is there anyone online or anyone in the room who wishes to speak for the public comment period? All right, with that, assuming there's no one, I will close the public comment period and move on to the consent agenda. All right, so this is for item A and B, the January 8th, 2024 TAC meeting minutes, and then resolution endorsing resolution 2421 for a tip amendment for Fredericksburg rolling stock replacements. All right, do I have a second?
Second.
All right, any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries. With that, we'll move on to item number 7, tip amendments and modifications. This is for an endorsement of resolution 2423 for funding for the Shelton Sharp Road improvements and Route 1 630 area corridor improvements. All right, do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
All right, do I have a second?
Second.
All right, any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, any opposed? All right, motion carries. Move on to item number 8, our action and discussion items. We'll start with Smart Scale. Ms. Carrie Lee.
So first, we're going to go over the technical guide, which finally came out days ago. I'm just going to highlight the changes between the last time and now. So we'll go ahead and slide. So first, this is our definitive list for our high priority projects, and it hasn't really changed since the last time you looked at it. But I just wanted to make sure that you knew that this is what we are working with. Next slide is.
So I actually had a question just on the
Sure.
transit, maybe DRP is here, they can maybe answer this.
Sure.
So I guess the question is, basically, in the transit category with this change, is a new local bus route or basically like a new kind of express bus route not eligible for smart scale?
I think from what I've heard so far, it's going to be, and they're really trying to prioritize having a dedicated bus lane, so I feel like it's more for this time around. I don't know. Because I was confused about that as well, it's that, so there's no. Well, also it's not eligible, so. Let me confirmation, I think it is priority now.
Okay.
I mean, the best is their high capacity, so I guess if it's not formal BRT, but you have got high capacity route or expanding in facility, but doesn't look like a regular bus route will qualify.
And then I guess the other question is like with a bus station, does that still qualify or is that?
A shelter or.
Yeah, like a shelter or like a transfer station? Even if it's just serving like local bus?
I believe so, it's part.
Yeah, construct or expand bus facility, so I assumed.
So we'd be able to do like a sidewalk and a bus shelter, so to say. Okay.
No, we might have to rethink.
I'll second that, Melody.
Oh, God. It's such a pain when they give us,
Did one round too
Yeah.
late.
yeah, when they give us these things so late in the game, it's a real pain. Get it.
All right,
Carrie?
Okay, so we've had a lot of questions about what a regionally significant project is, so I just made this slide to clarify that. Here, but basically regionally significant means something that would normally be included in the modeling of the metropolitan area's transportation plans. So, read that. Next slide. This is a new thing, the readiness gates. We have 3 readiness gates. The first one is during pre-application submission. During the initial pre-application, you will receive a list of supporting document requirements, depending on your feature, and a list of VDOT staff that you need to engage with before the pre-application submission is done. So this is for certain high-risk documents, which will be on the next slide. The VDOT staff will engage with you and check a box, confirming that they did engage with you and that your document will support the associated application. Next slide. This is if you have these features. So new through lanes, managed lanes, grade separated interchange if you're improving one and creating a new one. You have an innovative interchange, ramp improvements, or roadway on the line. Next slide.
Can you just?
Yes.
It's a language thing, so forgive me as a foreigner, but when you say through the lane,
A new lane.
a regular lane.
Yeah, not a.
General.
Thank you.
General purpose.
General purpose regular lane. Great, thank you.
So for full application submission, for all supporting documents, the staff will verify it, that they've reviewed the document. So all of these supporting documents have to have staff completion, have to have staff confirmation that they will be completed by July 15th. That's before the application done. All your supporting documents have to be in. Next slide.
Just one question. So with resolutions of support of paid and leverage funding, that means that those have to be finalized by July 15th?
We would probably, yes, I'm gonna say yes. I mean, so no matter what, the deadline is officially August 1st. But if you
Right.
don't have stuff submitted by July 15th, then most likely, I think it will be OIP will be reaching out to you and being like, hey, you need these documents. You have 2 weeks to get them in.
Yeah.
So, and that's why I'm trying to tell all the localities to try and have that resolution of support, like get it on like your June. So that you don't have to worry about it being in your July one.
So the resolution of support, there's no issue with that. I guess the question is the leverage funding, if the leverage funding has to be finalized by the 15th, that could mean like, have to make a decision on that in June.
Hmm.
But the challenge a lot of times we have is we don't know what the cost estimates for anything is, so it's difficult to kind of finalize the leverage funding.
I mean, that is just 2 weeks before the deadline.
But there's no ways we're gonna get the cost estimates like in July, are we? Hint, hint, hint.
And a lot of times we get them like 5 days before like the application
I
deadline.
mean, it,
Our goal is to have
Yeah.
as much that is frankly by free. Have a lot of shingles.
Right.
I don't specifically recall getting things 5 days prior to. If that would be the updated, one thing that would change is the information. I know that was one thing, and all you had done some slides to point out the differences in pre-app and app.
And-
one of
and-
The differences were that pre-app did not have inflation at that time, that is changing over time, correct?
yeah, so it will actually be a different inflation rate between pre-application and full application. Because we're going into the next fiscal year.
On
Will we
those.
know that beforehand?
You know it now.
Yeah.
Oh, it's the guidance we've already got. Okay.
The portal applies inflation based on fiscal year, but.
Right.
Yeah, I see what you're
For
saying.
this fiscal year, and application for next.
Yep.
And that's for anything.
Mhm.
It will do that for any of the applications. So that smart portal, it will change based on your.
So in theory, one thing that you could look
Take
at,
it.
maybe the difference is that if the pre-app would include inflation to get you to next fiscal year, so it could be adjusted and that your base would increase
Right.
by the 1 year of inflation, and then your inflation would decrease by that 1 year. of inflation.
Makes sense.
Okay.
I have no idea.
When we talk about supporting documents and staff confirmation, how are you guys gonna look for us to submit things to you by that July deadline, or how are we gonna
No, I think it's
Okay,
to,
the portal.
just actually in the portal? Cause we won't be submitting our actual apps till by August 1st. So if you guys can see in progress apps, I guess that's fine, yeah.
yeah.
Okay,
I mean, you might be getting notifications from maybe starting July 15th that you need to have.
Yeah.
Submitted, like, and they're going to be on you about it because they want it submitted sooner rather than later.
I know we got the email last week, about submission and readiness gates and everything, so.
And I confirmed, I can send you guys the Excel file, so I'm gonna be reviewing it to make sure that everything's consistent between the draft technical guide and the readiness dates, because the Excel file is a couple months old now. Because he didn't note that some things had changed in it, so just either make note that changed, or I'm just gonna go in there and update it so that it's the most up to date based on the technical guide that we have out.
I have a question. This is Nick Ruiz. Apologies for not being there in person. I'm sick. One of the project readiness criteria for transit capital projects, would VDOT be looking, or DRPT rather, be looking for some commitment of operating funding to be able to run the service that would be provided by the additional capital, like if it's a rolling stock, for example? Would they be looking for some type of letter of support from our board or some other body that says, yes, we would, when we receive this equipment with the smart scale funding, we would have, sufficient operating funding to run it?
I'm gonna double check. I don't think they have that in the transit section. So all I am seeing in the transit section, there's a couple. So let's see, are you talking about for like rail service improvements?
Yeah, for rail service improvement. So think of a theoretical project where we're increasing service on VRE, and that requires additional equipment, right?
Yeah.
Would we have to also come in for a complimentary, we're increasing service by 10%, we're increasing our operating funding by 10%. And that, to prove that that's programmed into our budget in the next 6 months.
Yeah, so all I am seeing mainly for like rail service improvements or a new station or station improvements is provide a planning study, feasibility study documenting a locally preferred alternative consistent with the project scope. Fill out the transit curl for your project.
What's next?
Yes, last year we just, with letters of support, and you could include your EDP, which has, you know, your future operating capital funds as well listed out, so that might do, but
Okay,
Nick, we suggest that you chat to Amy's office, outside of the meeting to like argue out the particulars of that particular project.
yeah, no, I didn't know if it was gonna be a hard and fast constraint this round or not, so, but yeah, no, we plan to talk to the RPC in the next couple weeks. Thank you.
any other questions with this slide? No, okay, next slide. So there are some new portal warnings when you fill out your application, when you're putting down different features, the portal will come up with a warning. There's some additional, bike ped and freight guidance. There's some additional guidance on ramp improvements, grade separation and other interchanges. So basically, if the proposed interchange alternative was proposed during round 5, that alternative can be submitted with a previously eligible supporting study for round 6. A framework document has to be provided with the pre-application for new or improved interchanges.
What is that framework document?
So VDOT can explain that better, but it's basically a pre-document for the full document that has to be provided in July.
Okay.
Like your outline of the work you're doing for the,
This one may or may not be a problem at all. The ICAP assessment tool for intersection improvements, but boy, that red does not show up well here. Applications based on VDOT studies completed before.
This appear to be
research,
exempt.
So I don't know that that one's gonna affect us at all. But we only need the draft versions at pre-application time. So this one, so there's new factor weights tracking scoring. We're currently talking to our CPG member about this. So we're in category B and safety is not gonna be scored as high as accessibility. Accessibility, as Paul has pointed out to us, is a big problem for our area because it's very difficult for us to get to jobs in 45 minutes or less. As many folks commute to DC and it's pretty far away. So that's gonna be a hurt for our projects. Currently talking about that, and we don't know if we're gonna be able to do anything about that for this round.
So I read through this document over again. It's funny, my wife said, "What are you reading?" I was like, you know, reading that smart skill. But
Your full life.
in looking through the entire document, I think this is the biggest issue for us, like the changes. And unfortunately, it seems like it just came out of the woodwork somewhere between the 4th of December and the 12th. We
Yep.
first saw some indication on the 21st, and now it's like, this is the way it is, but it wasn't something that was part of the discussion or
Yeah.
was shared with NPOs.
Yeah.
And I was listening to NPR on the way here this morning, and basically they're talking about basically transition bills, like in General Assembly. Almost everyone is on safety. They're like safety this, safety that. And it's where like everyone else had their safety kind of category bumped up except us. We had congestion and accessibility basically bumped up, and those don't help us.
Yeah, but it's a huge problem.
Right.
And we were not given a chance to comment on it at all. It just like popped up. So we're currently trying to talk about it, but I don't know that we're gonna be able to.
so if there was any change to be made, which is highly unlikely, it'd probably be an extra 5% for safety and a minus 5% for accessibility.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. Makes sense. I mean, it obviously is a little bit different for Stafford and North Stafford because we can reach the majority of jobs in 45 minutes. But I know for the city and South Stafford and Spotsy, that's a pretty big impact. It's an hour trip at most.
hurts staff.
It does to a point, yeah.
Can't reach, let's say, Maryland suburbs of DC.
Yep, yeah.
And one kicker, that's 45 minutes, that's congested travel time.
Yeah.
Congested.
Right.
Slide.
Woodbridge.
Did you have something?
You can say that louder, you don't have to be shy, yeah, we're not.
Freeze on a bad day.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, so land use has had a tumultuous few months. The land use factor was at one point completely removed, and then they found out that they could not do that. So they put it back in last minute. And now it's going to be, instead of its own factor, it's going to be a multiplier, which means that the land use score is going to be applied to the other scores, called a multiplier. So the way that's gonna be done, I've got it better on the next slide. Next slide.
Next slide.
Yeah, so in this case, this is an example. In this case, the land use score was 73.2. So there's I put a, I can't think this morning. They put a formula down here. So what they did was they divided it by 100 and added 1. So they applied to the final benefit. Wow, it's Monday, sorry.
The math is up there, yeah.
Yeah, I saw that, but I can't speak it this morning.
So
So
what,
in this case, it
Everything-
was. I'll just read it.
Everything's multiplied by
My
1.73.
It's Monday.
For this example, everything's multiplied by 1.73.
Yeah, you can see all that.
so my concern about this, while everybody is very focused on those weightings on the previous two slides, what worries me about this is that there were examples shown and so on, but I'm not so sure that we know what the impact of this is actually going to be on our projects this round. I think this is like a roulette wheel. You can see calculations, you can do some calculations, but you don't know the impact of this. For example, on safety, like what is the impact on the safety metric going to be? We don't really know until you've got actual projects and you've actually run all the other numbers, and then you do this, then you see it changes your score. But we can't predict it as much as OIP pretends you can. I think there are going to be some unintended consequences of this, and we will only see it once the scores are actually calculated.
To give you
They're gonna be negative, but we don't
Yeah.
know.
To give you an example, I did this calculation for the Garrison Road widening project from round 5, and it didn't have any significant impact on its score.
On which one?
Garrison Road widening.
Because that's a roadway project.
Yeah. Yeah, oh, on the standalone bike ped projects, of course, but
It's gonna be-
on roadway projects, standalone bike ped projects, it's a 75% decrease in overall scoring, according to the data they showed. Just on our roadway projects, at least for our Garrison Road project, it did not have a significant impact on its overall outcome in the scoring metrics.
Have you tried it on a roadway project that's got a significant like ped portion?
That does have a significant, of all the projects in last round, that was our project that had the most significant bike ped portion. And the highest land use score projects, yeah.
And it, I'm sorry, and it didn't have a significant?
I wouldn't say it's significant, no, but yeah,
That's
it,
useful to know.
yeah. It didn't change by like, say the benefit score was like a 12, it didn't go down to like a 4. It was still like a 10 or 11 or something, so.
So it depends on the project, basically with the land use, basically for the transit and the bike ped projects, would a lot of times get a high score in land use. But then in the other categories, they might have, little to no score.
Right.
So in doing this, basically, by not getting a specific, land use score just based on that, by multiplier, if they basically for the other 5 categories have a very low score, like, let's say they just have like 1 is the total of the other 5 categories, and they get like the maximum of the land use, which is a 2. The most you would go from 1 to 2, which would probably not be enough to get funded.
To make any
Right.
difference, yeah.
Before see those bike ped projects and the transit projects, they could get selected in smart scale just based on the land use score. So I say the fact that land use is still in there does help them a little bit, but it's gonna be a lot harder to get basically a bike ped project or transit project funded with this change. And I'll say basically to get it funded, it would need to basically get some kind of score that's significant in one of the other 5 categories.
I'm guessing that if you put it to the roadway project will actually carry the score
Yes.
on behalf of the bike ped project, but not the other way around.
And that was deliberate.
Yep.
They they wanted bike ped projects to be grouped with roadway projects. They did
And of
not
course-
want projects to be carried on their land use score. They-
Of course, the danger is that the bike ped project, while it doesn't help your score, it does negatively impact your cost benefit calculation because it costs money to build the bike ped project, right? So you're pushing up your cost and not helping your score. So I think that whatever way you do this, bike ped projects are gonna get hammered totally.
Yeah, if you really want to get into smart scale and how projects score, you sit down and say, what is the benefit of each of my project types? What is the benefit of this 200 feet of sidewalk? What's the benefit of this crosswalk? What's the benefit of this turn lane? And you calculate a smart scale score for each of those and add it up. And what's the cost of those? And that's how you can determine the cost benefit. And for some of them, bike ped will have no benefit at all. For others, it will still slightly help, but definitely not as much as last round.
So that's the point I was making earlier, that
Yep.
we don't know the complete outcome until it's run on exact projects. Frankly, bike ped is gonna get hammered.
So I know we've touched on land use a lot over the past few months, so I don't want to stay on this too much, but if there's any last points in land use, so those are next slide.
I do think it's good to know that a roadway with significant bike ped wasn't hurt too badly by this change.
Yeah, and I'll point out that one project was the most significant benefit project in the region under all of the categories, so it's probably an outlier, but just the only example that I ran so far.
It would be good to do some experiments with that.
Yep.
All right, next slide. Okay, so funding decisions for draft 6-year improvement plan was another section. There's some new wording. It adds a detailed description of step 1 and the new step 2, which was the old step 3 because they've removed step 2. And it adds another reason the CTB may choose not to fund an otherwise high-scoring project in the final decision-making, because that final decision-making is completely subjective on the part of the CTB. Something that our CTB member made clear at the last policy committee meeting, when she said that no matter what Smart Scale has done or has quote unquote screwed up, the CTB can fix it in the final decision. That's what she said in the policy committee meeting. Applicant delivery performance as reported by local assistance division is the new silent metric added. Awards can now be based on past performance in administering projects. So if your project scores very highly, the CTB may look at your past performance and decide not to fund your project anymore.
That is a concern.
So that's only though if the applicant is administering the project though, correct? I mean, if VDOT is administering the project, I don't think that that's an issue.
That should be true, yes, but
Well,
there
Can
was
we-
some subjectivity in that.
Can we
too.
check that with VDOT? Is that true?
That is an interesting point, yes, so I think there's some subjectivity, and I think he is going to do.
The CTB is gonna do what they wanna do.
it's also a question of when do they take the performance metrics? Is it done right now, or is it done a year from now when they do scoring? So,
I think when we see the outcomes, there's gonna be some gnashing of teeth.
I was given to
The
believe
CTB.
that it was the CTV's discretion.
that's scary. Okay.
Next.
Okay, this is just simply a lot of words to say the new economic development metric. The previous was the laborious putting in of things into, you remember the process. The new one is supposedly this VEDP database. We update that and we go with that. We'll see how the new process is. I hope it's.
Can we just make the point, and correct me if I'm wrong,
Yes.
correct me if I'm wrong. We still need localities and applicants to go in to the BPD,
And make sure that it's up to
BDP, and
date.
make sure that it's up to date
Have any of
for
these-
your FAMPO and GWRC projects, right? The locality can update that. We can't go in there and change stuff in the
We
VPD,
don't know if we
VDP.
can. I have not looked into it yet.
Okay. But please, for the projects you've submitted to FAMPO or GWRC, go into that economic database and check that the information in there is correct, because the project may score badly if it's not up to date.
It is a bit concerning how this metric's gonna be done because it'll be based on the discretion of how each economic development department uses this database. For instance, you'll see a very big difference in how Spotsy's list of sites in here versus Stafford County's list, and that's just because we both use the databases very differently. So we'll see how this goes.
So my comment on this is about a 12% of just the smart scale score, and this is completely changing. This is definitely gonna be less staff work, but just, as others have said, just the impact of this is unclear at this point. Probably won't know until we go through this round.
Yeah.
Maybe good, maybe bad, or maybe somewhere in between.
Yeah, there's so many unknowns here. Okay, next slide. Okay, here's a new section, the need analysis criteria. Advice on what information is necessary to allow VDOT to decide what level NEPA document is necessary for your project, whether it's gonna be a programmatic categorical exclusion, a CE, an EA, or if something above these, if you need a MEA or an EIS, you can't even put your project in.
Unless you already have the EIS, which is unlikely. I'm assuming if you've already done an EIS, you can submit because he has the EIS.
Go back. That's not, it doesn't have to be completed. You just have to know what documents need to be started and, some of the documents should be started, but I would say, EAS or EIS does not need to be completed by smart scale submission because you need to, the project needs to be like in your right of way phase to finish those documents.
Yeah, you can't have it approved yet,
Right.
if you don't have the subsequent phase. So it would only be a draft anyway.
Right. So it doesn't need to be completed before smart scale submission.
So I think if you have any projects that make them in that category, we can reach out and have conversations, but I think, for example, on the alternative analysis, there would need to be a preferred alternative identified, so you know what you're applying for.
Right.
And I understand, why that would be, so that the application represents, what can move forward as far as those other processes.
Those last few words were actually in the technical guide. The project is not appropriate for smart scale, which I was like, oh, okay.
But yeah, I think if it indicates a need for that, and then I think it's
The
what
timing.
may have been done.
Right.
So, if, for example, Fairfax, I think they've got all kinds of money projects in different phases, so if they've already completed and they're looking for construction money, I don't know what that would mean for them, like they may still be able to apply,
Okay.
but that's stuff that we would need to look into. We haven't gone down that rabbit hole too much because it's new, it's not something we've had to deal with, so it's what I'm saying, if you have a specific project that you want to ask us about, we can pull in Heather Williams, who's our environmental manager, and, really have her evaluate to find out specifically, what type of document would be appropriate for that project, because I think there are some different nuances with each project and each location, whether it's that it has a lot of cultural resources around it, if it's got more wetland impacts, there's so many different factors in there that it's hard to say, one size fits all. But before we just kick it out completely, have that conversation, and try to get more specifics.
Okay.
I guess our Butler Road and Route 1 project would be a good example of requiring significant documentation beforehand.
Yes,
Right.
I think that one, it has all those things.
Yes.
Yes,
You
that's-
mentioned everything it has,
Yeah,
yep,
that's-
so.
Yeah. Quadro.
I'm sorry. I had a flag, bring me your flag. Oh, yeah. Okay, next slide. Okay, so that is the first section. The next section, we have a list of regional candidate projects, results of consultation with locality planning staff, campus staff, and VDOT district staff. Out of the original projects submitted for consideration, these are considered the most likely to meet readiness requirements. Now, we have a final list. Paul spoke to us last night, and we would like to submit a different one on the list. Instead of our original 10, wow, that needs to be going up way.
Can I actually ask just one general question on?
Sure.
on just the methodology before we get into the weeds of this. So, this pertains potentially to the I-95 project, like on page 22 of just the, the guide here, basically it talks about a financial plan to be needed for projects over $100 million. I guess my question is with the I-95 project, if it was basically submitted as both directions, it would, I guess, trigger that and what I guess is required to, I guess, have this financial plan. This seems to be like a new requirement basically in smart scale.
She will have to do a financial plan, and it will have to be done from the beginning to the end of that project.
Yeah, and I know projects that are in process now.
Okay.
In that range have financial. plans,
Yeah, we've been doing,
And they're updated annually.
yeah, we've been doing that for years on
I guess my
anything
question
over.
is that a reason to only consider one direction?
I think there are several reasons. to
That be,
Like to add that one to it, we could certainly.
yeah, that's the, yeah, the thing, we've been doing financial plans on a lot of the projects on the interstate for several years now, so.
Good.
And they have to be done yearly, and they have to be done from the beginning to the end until that project is totally out of the federal agreement process.
Right.
So, yeah, we have to do it. And Michelle's been doing it for years. Yeah.
And is this I think you guys might have answered, this is not a locality requirement to do for smart scale, this is a power requirement. So I guess it's not work that we have to do, other than provide some information. So,
But VDOT is supporting us.
You can drop
Yeah.
Yeah,
HPP.
but yeah, we've been doing that for years.
Okay, all right. Sorry, Carrie.
No, you're fine, it's fine. These are all questions we need to answer. Yeah, you can, I don't need to see the HPP column on the end, but
I got you.
yeah, so we have the I-95 exit 136 interchange modification / Centerport Parkway to US 1 interchange. That one is currently combined. We may decide at some point that we need to split it, but right now it's a good project combined, VDOT thought. So I had a meeting with VDOT and we discussed every one of these projects in some detail about whether they thought that it made sense, whether it was going to be ready, whether they had any concerns about it being ready. And that's our readiness column. So we have that one first, then we have the I-95 widening from exit 130 to 126. Today, we don't necessarily have to talk about the features for these, but just that these are our projects, and then we can set to work on which features are going to be included. Then we have Warrenton Road widening, we have US 1 and Route 3 interchange. Butler Road, Enon Road / Centerport Parkway connector, Route 3 widening 4 to 6 lanes west of Harrison, Route 1 Massaponax Church Road intersection, Route 208 pipeline, Levels Road, and Route 208 pipelines to the station road. Those are our 10. Paul would like us to consider Route 639 stars. VDOT, when I spoke to VDOT, they had some thoughts about that and as to why it should be a locality project instead. And I would really like it if VDOT would explain.
Can I just clarify though, the request is not basically for Route 639 stars, is for Route 3 pipeline. And just the Route 639 stars is just for the intersection with Route 3. The rest of it would be the pipeline study basically from, I forget, I think the western kind of border approaching Old Plank. The eastern border would be somewhere around Salem Church. So it's a big stretch of Route 3.
Do you want to pull up the,
I was just about to ask.
yeah, pull that up.
So we've been like with the Route 3 pipeline study, we've been mostly talking about that red section kind of, you can think of it, it's a big corridor. There's original pipeline study from Endora Drive all the way to the west side of 95. And then basically in this most recent rendition, the state has been kind of attempting to redo the portion from Task Force, the west side of 95. And that's the section which, you know, we just found out recently with info and the city and everyone else that it's not going to be ready for smart scale round 6. Hopeful will be ready for smart scale round 7. So that's kind of off the list.
So you're pulling this from the old Route 3 pipeline, the previous Route 3 pipeline?
Well, I'll say the blue and the green, those are still the current Route 3 pipeline. It hasn't changed. It was completed at the end of 2022. Those are smart scale eligible.
Right.
And that's what we want is we want the green. And this is the only change in the green is that there's this Route 639 stars study that's coming up and posing a quadrant roadway with Route 3 instead of the through cuts. So that's the major improvement with that, kind of that middle central section. But it's a big kind of stretch of roadway. We go from, it's from Single Oak all the way basically to the Salem Church Road intersection area.
So you're looking for everything in green to be under one smart scale application?
Yes.
Okay, and that's not currently on our list, correct? It's
It's
crossed out or actually,
not currently on the list, right?
So just go back to our list. So we can have 10. So are we gonna swap out one for another one, or what's the, just help us understand what the,
So it would be
Suggestion.
swapping out number 7, basically for the Route 3 pipeline study in the center. The one that's number 7 is kind of more like Route 3 West.
Oh, nice.
Basically, we want kind of Route 3 kind of pipeline center.
so maybe we ask,
This has a better shot of getting funded on the HPP.
so let's ask VDOT comments on the suggestion. I'm actually not particularly phased by which section of Route 3 and whatever we do, right? My concern is that it meets all the criteria, it's going to be ready on time, and it's likely to do well in smart scale. Those are my 3 concerns. Really don't care about which section
back to
people are
the
passionate
smart
about. So I don't,
So that
I
you
don't,
can see what he's talking about.
So the entire green box. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. I say just the exact details of that Route 639 kind of improvement of Route 3. We don't know those yet. It's supposed to be some kind of quadrant roadway.
do you have an estimated cost for all of this?
No, this true of the pipeline studies, we don't have cost of anything.
so those 5 line items there in the green box are, just excuse my ignorance, but is the suggestion that all 5 of those get put into one project?
Yes.
Yes, and I'll say there might be something down on Route 639.
I keep moving over here so you can see that and you're
Yeah,
that way.
that's
Forgive
fine.
me.
There's only so much your
So,
backside.
I guess I'll say I don't see any issue with it. It makes sense to doing the pipeline study instead of the widening. If VDOT doesn't have any comments against it,
I'm not
it
against.
makes sense. Yeah,
So all 5 of those things we can put into one project.
yes,
Yes.
yes,
And
route.
As long as you have, so this is what I got told. As long as you have one feature that was covered under HPP, then they don't care about the rest.
And all of those things are in or have recently been in pipeline studies, so we don't need a whole lot of additional VDOT work. I just want to
It
clarify.
won't be more than.
This is already ongoing.
That's why I'm asking this
Yes.
question. That's exactly why I'm asking this. I want to make sure.
Yeah.
That's,
I mean, you cannot add anything.
no, that's why I'm asking this. Are all of those elements in a pipeline study or have
Yes.
recently been in a pipeline study?
That's okay. So there's no request with this that the VDOT district do additional work. I know that I guess VDOT central office is working on the STAR study and WAPE is working on the pipeline study. So those would be and they give that to the district.
And they're good with moving forward with this for smart scale.
Yeah.
Okay.
STAR study and the pipeline study, that's what it's made for.
All right,
Maybe the only thing I will say on some of these locations. To have a good understanding of the total footprints, because we do have national park and some there. So we want to make sure that that's not introduced in the environmental questions. So like I think the Heatherstone location, that is national park there on the corner.
Right.
So we just need to, make sure that whatever studies are done, it needs to look at more than just, here's the footprint of the geometry of the road, likely where would outfalls be, so that where some of the impacts that maybe aren't as easily seen. So they just need to do a deep enough to that some of those.
Could the county work with those people doing the pipeline studies to get us a drawing of this? Like I'm looking at it and I recognize the roads, but I'm trying to picture the whole thing as one thing.
But I
And then
don't think that they are not all part of a single part of pipeline.
Yeah, there's basically there's one study that goes along Route 3, there's another study along Route 639. This is a hybrid combining part of the Route 639 study with Route 3.
That work, 2 different compliance studies?
Are those two different consultants?
Oh, yes. Good results. And I mean, as far as adding work to either study, I think that would probably like add work to either study, but that's not to say that you couldn't take
Yeah.
specific things. Cassie, I don't know as far as taking pieces and parts of multiple studies and making them one application with which questions. Not,
I don't think so. I mean, probably if I asked Dorothy, they might not have seen it
that's what I'm
before.
saying is that there are gonna be a lot of these things that are not questions that have been asked yet. I think we
Yeah.
got this.
But I mean, like the pipeline studies and everything's broken down by alternatives, so those can be just taken out and then combined. So I don't see that being,
So what I'm thinking is that if we are okay with this, and I leave it to you all to decide whether we are okay with this, is that we really need to get a drawing, and then we take that drawing to both sets of consultants and say, hey, we need this, you know, one half of this needs to come from you, the other half of this needs to come from you, but it needs to add up in the end to one picture. So we kind of need like a GIS map at least or something so that we can take it to these consultants and ask them to help us construct one project out of this.
So what I would suggest is that we have Spotsy, VDOT, and the consultant just before the policy committee confirm that we'll be good to go with this project. For pre-application, final application will be fine.
Yeah.
So, assuming nobody has TAC has any issues with it, doesn't seem like it, I think we're good to go.
Has the next Route 639 STARS study meeting date been set?
so.
I would suggest that communication happens before the meetings of these various studies. In other words, that we
Yeah.
send an email and we start sharing a map so that people know what we're talking about before we get to the next meetings.
All right, do you want to jump back to the project list?
So the Route 3 pipeline did propose through cut their signature, so you're saying you don't want that?
The STARS study is saying we don't. Wait,
I know the
that-
Star City
yeah.
did want it, but so you're saying that you would not want what pipeline says you would prefer.
Well, VDOT through we want what the state is recommending. And with the Route 639 STAR study, they're saying this quadrant roadway is better than a through cut. I mean, if the state says, you know, we should go with the through cut, we're not against that. But we're just following what
I
the
just
state
wasn't
said.
sure if that's it. Stuff, so different alternative. Let me be clear, so you too, you seem to prefer. It would be smaller footprint, so it's in a way more approachable, and I don't know that they, you know, vetted what the broad concept was, I don't know. Now, I would look to see what operationally works well. I don't think that there was a particular downside to elimination of that through movement application, because people easily make adjustments to their travel patterns, and still get off the road. Most of your traffic. And it also wasn't studied as a series. Like, this is a series. And there were also, the quad road, as I recall, it was gonna take the, road parallel in 3 by, furniture building.
Right.
And that, I believe, is a private road, so there was a lot of right of way acquisition. It would be additional costs, so, yeah, there's just a lot of factors in play, and when you're combining them with other projects, you know, again, that's just additional cost escalating. So I think that would be things to consider is what price tag are you looking for, you know, the big project, and what would that do as far as the difference.
When I say that, other than that intersection, the rest of it, I think is fairly cheap in terms of just improvements. I said that the county did have money set aside for the red, which we're not doing, so we could move that to the green.
Sounds to me like it would be a good idea to get a representative of each of the consultants plus VDOT district plus the county in a room or on a call on a screen, seeing as everything's on a screen these days, and actually just talk through these elements because we need somebody to start saying whether or not there are any red flags. And it's very short notice this morning to try and hash this out. I suggest if it's possible, could VDOT facilitate a meeting with a person from each consultant plus the county plus VDOT to just talk through this?
So the green. You're talking about things that were done round one pipe. So the previous pipe.
Yeah, which
So
was
somebody
completed in
tried to
December
follow
of
up
twenty
the
twenty-two.
study, So we do not have access to go
I
back
get
and
it.
ask them to do it.
I get it.
And we're not asking them to make changes to the recommendations, and basically, the idea is just that the Route 639 starts, assuming that suggests something different. That would kind of supersede the original Route 3 pipeline study recommended for that one intersection.
So all cost estimates will have to be updated, right?
We think that
And
it
wait-
needs to be updated
Wakeby has told the county that they can do that.
Oh.
Yes.
To do what?
To update the Route 3 pipeline study, because I know that that was concerned of the district.
Update what, the cost estimate?
Cost estimates,
That the
for-
county cannot do.
no, that Wakeby will update them.
Remember Chad made that comment on Friday, when we were talking, that, yeah, I know, we mentioned that. We had had that discussion, that. Update that, because I remember going, oh, well, that's awesome, I'm glad you guys have the personnel to do that.
And that becomes difficult when we're not in those conversations. So we don't know what's said, but.
Yeah.
You know, I don't have any issue with it. I'm saying that those are older studies that we're now asking for changes to be made. Those are not current studies. So, I mean, Cassie, I don't know if you want to reach out and find out what Ruth's game plan on that was. To go back to the original consultants, I guess, to see what would have been done.
All right, so we'll move this discussion outside of the TAC meeting, just before the policy committee agenda goes out. I, and I guess Ian, would ask that everyone, all parties involved, confirm that this project will be good to go for the pre-application and final application. So all work can be completed without any extra resources on the VDOT district.
And if that's the case, are we then good to
Yes.
swap the other one out and put this one in the list?
Yes.
Is everybody okay with that? Because this TAC needs to
Yep.
obviously recommend the list of projects to the policy.
I know, Bassam, I saw you had a hand up a while ago.
I'm fine.
Okay. All right, if we want to jump back to the project list, this is an action item.
Yep.
So we have the 10 projects here, and how will Fampo staff put these into Fampo Engineering lists?
Oh, it's kind of arbitrary.
Yeah.
Because they're all Bamboo items.
Yeah.
So we'll kind of group them however you guys see fit.
I just by locality, I guess.
Yeah, by
Okay.
locality.
I mean, I said that two of them were previous Banco applications, number 2. and
Oh, right,
number
so
8. So it makes sense to have 2 and 8
administrative
on.
convenience.
Yeah.
We'll just put them where they previously were, the ones that were previous applications, we'll put them where they previously were, so I don't have to move them around.
Okay.
When do we need to make a decision on 95 in one direction versus the 2?
You know, rather than.
Yesterday.
Well, I guess my question is, should we make that decision now or should we wait?
Well, I think we have to make that decision by the end of March.
Yeah.
When is the pre-app deadline?
To do the work for the application, you'll need to make that decision like now, so that the work can be done for the cost estimate and the sketches. So obviously VDOT's recommendation was
Southbound.
just do southbound. You'll do the retaining walls on northbound, but southbound will just be the widening. Sound wall, sorry, yeah.
They would also evaluate the stormwater to see what, of the stormwater that's for the northbound, if they would put the stormwater in D and, you know, what could be done to kind of, at least not make it more difficult to do anything, for the northbound, but at the very least to, you know, consider all of that with the design.
And we're not attaching the tunnel.
Well, just doing southbound would be not attaching the tunnel at this time, perhaps. Later date.
I mean, are we then just okay to do southbound?
That's a decision for Spotsy and the city.
City is here, Spotsy is here.
I say, I understand just the need with the southbound, just with the concern that the greater kind of congestion feature. Southbound of town, so we are supportive of the VDOT recommendation. I say just with the shared use path, my thought there is that we need to, that we're to advance, we need to basically find some kind of funding source, which is not include highway funding, that spend some seed money on it. And then maybe if that can be found, then maybe that can provide a little bit more about when that happens.
So I guess
It
what,
doesn't preclude you separate money source like that trail fund that state has. I don't know how you get your project on the trail list, but if we could somehow get it on there, you know, maybe you could get some.
So-
that money.
just a suggestion moving forward, I know we talked at the last meeting about, future studies, having that discussion after Smart Scale. Maybe this fall, August, September, we have that discussion about future studies as well as some of the stuff that we weren't able to do this round, like that project, and how we can move forward with trying to find funding for some of that stuff.
And just a general comment with the studies, I don't know if it's possible somehow with round 7 to kind of the schedule where the studies begin sooner. No control yet.
Or- Yeah.
Yeah, but we don't have full
It's
control
kind of
over
like
those
Bruno,
schedules.
we don't talk about kind of fight.
No, the central office has
Okay.
majority of the control over that. The only ones that we have better control over are like the arterial management studies.
Okay.
Those are the only ones that are kind of done outside of like smart scale schedules and everything.
That's feedback that would be, I think,
Appreciated.
appreciated.
Very
to
much.
The folks that are scheduling these studies.
Right.
We would love them to start sooner too.
There are
Um,
lots
should start this
of
fall.
things that are happening very quickly, and for all of us in this room, it's difficult to react to all these different moving parts. Trying to find time to get things prior to the various deadlines. So, again, if there are discussions about regional needs, now, I mean, even if there are things that today you want and need as a region that are not applications and that you don't have the information for, then be like, hey, we know what we want to study for next.
Yeah.
And I
So-
think
So
that's-
So we're gonna talk about that
We
on the
will.
staff
Yeah.
reports
Yeah.
today.
All right, so to move forward, we have the list of 10 projects here. Fampo staff will pull them into Jittersy and Fampo list. The only item is changing number 7 from the widening to the Route 639 and Route 3 stars recommendations that Paul and we just discussed. Do I have a motion for that?
Before you
Oh,
do
hold
that,
on.
quick question. Let's say that in these further discussions, we discover there's a problem with the proposed new project.
Then I would propose we stick with the list as is.
That's what I'm asking is like, if something comes up that we can't foresee right now because it's quite a new idea. Paul, are you okay that we revert to what's on the screen? Like, we're not saying you must do that, but let's say they find an insurmountable obstacle. Like we have to do some more work and no one's prepared to fund it or do the work or something.
Ian is saying that if this proposal of yours didn't work out, do we revert back to widening?
I'm looking for a fallback.
Well, we could do that, but I said that comes from the same study, so.
I'm hoping it won't happen. I'm hoping we can make this one
Right.
work.
Just asking you that.
But if it doesn't work, I just want you to all
Yep.
kind of think that what will we do if it doesn't work?
Like
There's a plan B.
So in for I-95, are we saying just southbound with this motion?
Yes.
Okay.
All right.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay,
Okay.
good.
Do I have a second? All right, any discussion? So our motion is I-95 being southbound, changing number 7 to the Route 639 and Route 3. And then if that doesn't work out, our fallback will be the Route 3 widening.
Correct.
Everyone's got that understanding? All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries.
Mr. Chair, who was the second thing?
Adam.
Adam, there are only 2 people making motions and seconds today. I know there are lots of other people in the room.
Rodney seconded the motion.
Oh, sorry, Rodney, my bad. I didn't hear you there. Yes.
All right, so we're gonna move on to the River Crossing Parkway, NEPA study update. If we could make this quick, I think we'll have the consultant come probably in a couple months and make a more, more detailed update.
So, yeah, so most of the folks were in the room through the last stakeholder meeting. They outlined the scope, kind of what their data collection efforts, where they were standing within that item, and basically said, okay, this is our first meeting, a little bit of data clarification, polishing still to come, but that's what they're working on. They have collected a fair amount of traffic data within the region. They outlined what the environmental scope was for the project, and they're still doing some work on that item. But kind of looking forward and moving ahead, our next stakeholder meeting will be online on February 29th at 2 p.m. You should have the invite. My apologies if you had a whole bunch of those for me. This Outlook hated setting up a recurring meeting ultimately here. So it had issues with that. The other item of note is that we're going to have our first public meeting March 20th at 5 to 7 p.m. at the District Auditorium on Beacon Road. Right now, the consultants are proposing an open house drop-in style format for that. And then we'll have our second public meeting identified later, probably in late summer, early fall. And I'll need to reach out to the Fredericksburg folks for that, because hopefully we'll have it at the ballpark if we can line it up, because that should be right in the middle of the project area.
So please just take note of that. March the 20th will be the first public meeting, and at that meeting, obviously this will also be discussed at the internal stakeholder group, but at that public meeting, be the first time the public sees which are the proposed alternatives that the consultant is actually studying in this study. Remember that the request to them was to construct up to 7 alternatives. There won't be 7, but it's funded for them to construct up to 7 alternatives. And so we're waiting to see what their proposed alternatives are.
If we get 5 and we have to say, no, go back and redo 1, we're still within our scope.
Any questions?
So real quick, on the meeting at our auditorium, do we have any idea what we would anticipate for the attendance? Because our auditorium is not that large.
Yeah, in that last
We
meeting.
don't, but we're not going to have sit-down style meeting.
I understand that, but it's been our experience that most of the folks come at the beginning, and then by the last half an hour, you don't really have any. It's not a steady stream, and especially once we get display board, if you had the Chatham Bridge public hearing there, it was not that well attended. And even with the boards, because we had 2 different setups, so that it wasn't people crowded around one board, it really gets tiring.
Are you worried about too few people or too many people?
Too many.
So I think that if we need to, we can put a staff member outside to say, can you just wait because there are too many people in the room? We can't anticipate how many people are going to arrive.
Well, with this meeting, considering that we're probably not going to have all the alternatives probably pre-published at that point in time, we're not expecting this meeting to be as big as the secondary meeting. This is probably going to be a lot more data informational, and it's probably going to be a slower.
Can I make a suggestion? Have you thought about using Jade for her high school?
Yeah, I wanted to say.
It has,
That's a little bit larger.
I think it has to be in Stafford County.
So
Or
trying to have-
Why does it have to be in Stafford County?
schools and the cafeterias that are much larger.
The challenge there's they don't have transit accessibility.
James Monroe?
So
When I said it could be a
So,
Yeah.
So we're trying to, I mean, the idea is that they should be out in the field and that they should be accessible by the people who are most impacted by a potential. So the suggestion that we had was that we have 1 in Southern Stafford and 1 in Central Park, because there are 2 meetings, right? That's the suggestion.
we consider the Howell Public Library space, but
that's similar.
yeah, it's actually, I think the capacity is about the same, but because it's long and narrow, it will probably actually be more cramped for much of
So
stuff.
this is not gonna be, this is gonna be boards up?
Yes.
Or
Yes.
so it's not gonna be a presentation?
No. It's board, the first one is going to be boards up, people walk around, and then they're going to have staff members of the consultant at every board to capture people's comments. They're going to have them comment on their preferences, either put stickers on the board.
Yeah. table, especially if they wanted to do things where they wanted to stickers. We've had some meetings that are similar to that. Sometimes we'll have plans out on tables. I just worry that it's gonna be a tight.
But this is y'all's meeting.
Yes.
Yes.
It is. I wanted to voice our concerns about the size of the space. Voice my concerns that we would like to do anything any different.
It's a nice day, it can be outside.
We will discuss it again with the consultant. And you all will be at the stakeholder meeting as well, so we can talk about problems again at the stakeholder meeting.
Like I said, I
Yeah,
just wasn't sure
and-
if anything had
yeah.
been put out publicly that you were getting any feedback to have some gauge of how many you would expect.
Not yet, considering that with the May meeting, there was a vote attached with the previous meetings, and we were basically at that limit. Previously, that we, like the open call, we actually dropped that down because there was kind of a push for public comment, and by the time the meeting actually started going, we actually started to see folks trail off there. I mean, we agreed that we'll probably see an influx early. We might just even set up so that we can allow folks to wander around even a little bit before. We don't have to like keep the doors closed until, so if it's open
Alright.
early to help facilitate flow.
Anything further on this, John?
Nope,
Alright.
just the last scope, so.
So we'll look to have the consultant come once the existing conditions is done, so they can do a presentation in the next few months, probably. All right, we'll move on to 8C CMAC STBG update.
Hey, big full item for y'all today. Just a reminder, these were our submitted projects through the screening process. We're able to get all the projects in, so they're all eligible for scoring at this point in time. Just a little kind of update on kind of some of the summary. So we completed the scoring. 36 are there. Of the 36 projects, we have about $53 million. Screening what became available for approximately $6 million available. We're still waiting VDOT totals for the actual allocations to be provided before we can start kind of earmarking money for each. Typically, the top two projects will be funded in each category. Sometimes a third place project will actually work its way in depending on the funding requests by the previous two projects. We're on schedule for spring recommendations, and we have the full application packs. Basically, everything was submitted, the spreadsheets, GIS files and everything later this week. We've been compiling those. We did a big rush to get the scoring out and available for this meeting, and we'll have that out shortly. So you have also a synopsis of what everybody kind of submitted as well. For CMAC and carbon reduction roadway scores, the top two projects were the South Point intersection as well as intersection improvements. The US 1 South Point Parkway intersection project was actually a previously funded projects. And then with the, I think this is going to be one of the categories that might be eligible for the third rotating in, because I think Levels Road is only saying $600,000. So we'll actually probably dip down, but we're waiting for the exact totals because we're going to have to see, are we only having $300 rolling over, or is it going to be a significant amount that it makes sense to apply that money to the third place items?
If we go back just one comment I'd like to make before we go too much further. I'll just add our Route 1 and Cole Landing and Route 1 and Forest and Woods projects will more than likely be our top projects or our top couple of projects in Smart Scale. So it definitely says something that they're at the bottom of this list for CMAC STBG.
The thing that we need to look at is two columns here that make
They would still be at the bottom of the list, whether or not that's there or not.
I'm just saying that the leverage funding and the cost effectiveness scores affect the ranking quite a bit on
Yes, they do.
a lot of these categories. So just bear that in mind.
Yep.
Also included within the packs are actually the scoring breakdown, so you actually have the data on that, and you'll get the files, of how that was determined later. But again, you can kind of take time to review that. For CMAQ, carbon reduction funds for transit, the top two projects is the Route 208 corridor, service expansion and the new transfer center to the Kalahari. Those are the top two scoring projects. That we're gonna, that the scoring uncovered. For CMAQ and the carbon reduction scores, the two VCR trail bridges were the top scoring projects as well. And that's the breakdown for how the scoring was developed. For STBG scores, once again, we see South Point Parkway scored highly, as well as the I-95 winding. Both of those two projects were pretty high within the whole corridor, and you can see the breakdowns of that available. STBG transit, transit vehicle replacements and transit shelters and benches were the top two scoring projects. And then for STBG, this includes 3 years of funding. There's only one submission for this. So this is Mine Road and Green Springs, bike ped improvements. And finally, for STBG studies, Harrison Road interchange in the IRA and the Harrison Road winding studies were the top two scored projects overall. So, and we included, because this one actually requires some coding, not computer coding, language coding here. We actually have to go through all the plans and identify which priorities and items scored points and where. So where we did that, we provided a list of how we determine each and one of those scores and each one. So you should get an idea. So questions, let me know which slides you want to jump to and from, but I know that's a large amount of.
And I think it makes sense. Yeah, we can talk a few questions now, but if anybody has questions, Ian, it makes sense maybe to set up meetings with everyone after, if they so choose.
If people have things they want to discuss.
Yep.
But remember, for any meetings that we have with one applicant only, we're just doing that to explain and share information. We're not making any decisions in those conversations. They're just explanations of further information. Decisions have to be made here and in the policy committee.
Yes.
So I just had a general kind of question about the bike ped with the GWC Greenway plan, and I'm not questioning just the scores or anything for this round, but like, if we have a project that is like not currently in that plan, is there a way to give consideration in the future? Like, how often is that updated? Like, is that connected to this, or what is the process for that?
Okay.
So
Carry the Greenway plan.
updating it.
Yeah, I can repeat. So, if we have a project that we want considered for that plan, like, yeah, like what's the schedule for that, or the process for, I guess, getting that consideration? And is that part of the CLRP, or is that separate from the CLRP?
It's gonna be part of the CLRP, and we are updating it as part of VPAC, so every locality is having their months to do it, so
Okay.
Jacob is gonna bring your updates to the VPAC.
Okay.
And we're gonna be updating
Just-
it there.
Is that happening right now?
Just a caution, just before everybody gets carried away with the Greenway plan. The Greenway plan we funded through a forestry grant. The grant is finished. There's no more money to spend a lot of time on updating that Greenway plan every 5 minutes, like once a year or whatever else. If you want that, we have to allocate staff time to that, right? It's an unfunded mandate. So just be careful about us saying about all these fantastic things we're going to do for the next.
Well, I'd just say if we're gonna have a scoring mechanism in CMAQ STBG with the Greenway plan, then we have to have the ability to update it through staff time. Otherwise, it should be removed from a scoring mechanism.
My expectation is that most of that work will be done by the locality staff. And they would be responsible for updating their part of it and just giving us information.
Okay.
I'll just also say, I believe the Greenway plan was approved by the DRC, so updates would also need to be approved by the chambers.
I'm sorry to sound like the old whiner, but I'm just trying to keep it realistic, like what we can achieve. We're gonna work on updating the PAMPO long-range transportation plan. Already discussed that and agreed it. We're gonna then do a round of CLRP updates to look at what's in the CLRP now and what should be added and things that might be moved to the needs list and all that kind of thing. So we are doing that. We're gonna do that in the next, however many months. And if we need to put Greenway stuff into the CLRP, absolutely we can do that because it's one of the places we get projects as a source from. But bearing in mind that has to be fiscally constrained.
And we're updating that for smart scale.
We're gonna be updating that. We were just asked to wait until some of these things come to the fore, so we know which projects we need to deal with and so. So we've waited some months and we will do that when we get there.
We weren't asking staff to do like a major new work project. We were just trying to understand the process, maybe more sense to explain something like the Pantho Greenway plan that maybe that goes into the GWC one, but King George and Caroline probably don't have to be updated as often. But the Pantho may.
I mean, if
it's part of this methodology.
If the relevant jurisdiction provides a map or something, and I mean, adding it won't be such a major job. It's just, you're not gonna rewrite that thing every year.
Right.
I'll talk to you about it after. All right, any further comments or questions? John, just schedule moving forward.
Schedule moving forward is we are currently on schedule with the procedure that we're outlining. We're going to be making recommendations to the policy committee. I believe that happens in April for it to be adopted in May, but right now we are not seeing any issues with that. It all depends on when we are notified of the actual amount of funds to be allocated per the.
So Susan, any guess as to whether we're gonna know how much money we'll have for CMAC and SDGB this year?
I would dare to say flat fund. I will say that every year flat fund, because I don't know. I'm hoping, the end of March would be in April. That's what I'm hoping for. And I literally, the day I get it, within an hour. I forward that to y'all as quick as I can. And I know y'all want to see it as quick as I want to send it to you. But I would dare to say, go ahead and start off with flat funding. And then anything above that is just gravy.
Okay,
We're actually so close on at least one of these categories that I don't even want to go there because it could literally mean your project's funded versus your project's funding.
Yeah.
For a few thousand.
And like I said, I wish I could
I know.
give you better, but I'm at the mercy of the people in Richmond, so.
so we'll bring this list back again in the TAC meeting at the beginning of March. Hopefully during March, we then get the money.
Perhaps in
Then
March.
at the beginning of April, it depends how long it takes us to do the allocations, but hopefully the beginning of April, you see the first allocations. And then by May, we ask the policy committee to adopt.
And we're probably gonna typically, we at least get at least one request to kind of shuffle money around because schedules change, and so we need to.
Yeah, I think in March, we should have a recommendation for how funding might look with flat funding. So that by April, you make those slight adjustments, and April we approve. So we can see it instead of approving in April, seeing it in April and approving in April. See an example in March.
Funding
Gets approved in
top two scored projects.
Get approved in
Yeah.
April anyway, it gets approved in May,
Well, we're taking it to policy committee in April.
not for approval.
Okay.
May we have
Facial bill.
Okay.
Action.
approved in May.
All right, move on to, unless there's anything else, Sean, we'll move on to item number D.
Included in your packet, Mr. Chair, is the resolution to direct a public comment, the draft GWRC Safety Action Plan. In looking at the content and structure of the plan, there are two documents, and the second, with the corridor profile, has the cost estimates. The projects the consultant has costed out are those that can be done within the existing right of way. So when some of the localities had a countermeasure for a paved shoulder, unless the right of way allowed for that to be done in the existing right of way, you'll see that's absent from their cost estimate list.
Which projects were the, I know all of Stafford's projects had that.
Probably, I'll say this, the only road that has the existing right of way to put paved shoulders in it today is Primary Route 2 through Caroline County.
Okay, because
So, what you need to do, look at the projects that are on the list. If you feel, looking at your GIS mapping, knowing that you had a contractor that could put a paved shoulder in. Also, if the segment length, you'd like it to be longer than that which was, costed out, provide us that information during the public comment period. And the consultant can easily make those adjustments. He's done all the backup documentation to add countermeasures. For example, Spotsylvania County, I would recommend you look at all of the countermeasures on all the roads. For example, just as an example, Orange Plank Road, you might see in Caroline County that they included raised pavement reflective markers on their roads. Take a look at all the projects and if you want to add raised reflective pavement markers on Orange Plank Road or extend the segment length, please do that. The consultant can easily, he's got the cost per mile for those kind of countermeasures. You might be able to kind of see what others have done and added. It's structured very well, as well as the beginning of part. So that concludes my presentation.
yeah, on the paved shoulders, we have had, our residency has done that on 7 or 8 projects for the past few years. We've never had to purchase right away. So we'll follow up on that.
Yeah, that's great.
If you see any major errors, like a link doesn't work in the document or something like that, please let us know. Because before we put it out for public comment, we'd like to know that there's we don't want 100 members of the public complaining that can't access a link or something. So if you see any major concerns like that, that we need to fix before the public comment kicks off, please let us know. But otherwise, we'd like to put it out for public comment. Remember, we're trying to work as fast as possible so that you'll be in time to apply for an implementation grant in the very next round. So we're really trying to crack the whip on getting this thing out early so that you're able to apply for those grants, or jurisdictions can get together and apply for a joint grant, or we can have a FAMPO joint grant, or we can have a GWRC joint, or whatever the case is. We don't have a strong view on how that should be carved up, but we're trying to push the timeline so that you're all able to put in applications. We really did this to help people get the cash to build the safety improvements or countermeasures or educational programs or whatever it is. That's our whole goal here. Our whole goal is to help all the localities improve safety by getting access to federal funds, which are not currently available to us. So we're trying to do that as quickly as possible, and obviously reduce road deaths, reduce injuries, etc. as a result.
And the consultant has prepared, for example, on your road, if you want the incremental cost of just one countermeasure, that's been computed for your road. And he also has structured those things. For example, so many of them will have raised reflective pavement markers or edge lines. Those can be bundled across all the roads that might have that countermeasure by jurisdiction that want to participate, so that those kind of bundling of countermeasures can be achieved when we move forward with implementation grant applications.
Yeah, I suspect by the time we come back in March, the grant will have been released to NOFO. So
yeah, the consultant's is watching it, and they're going to notify us of anything we need to know about.
So in March, maybe we can have a discussion about how we're going to do grant apps, if we're going to do a joint application, FAMPO and or GWRC, or by localities, and then we can go from there.
We're open to suggestions.
So I'm wondering if we actually need to start sooner than that.
We can have the conversation now. Yeah.
Till June.
It'll be 3 months.
I've seen these federal grants out to where you have to be applied for.
Yes.
That's my question is, and this is maybe a question for the city, like, would be interested in that joint application for the city, accounting for Lobster Boulevard under federal city. That's good. There is, I guess we'd like to start talking about that sooner.
So that's fine. So you,
for Lafayette and Route 2 as well, Paul. I think that's
Okay.
another.
Okay.
I think it'd be useful just to package, you know, if everyone's goes, to package 4 or 5 projects in all jurisdictions
So-
together into one application.
So I guess let's talk before the next TAC.
We can.
So maybe
internal-
between all of us, we can come back to the next TAC with a proposal that seems to work for folks.
Yeah, would you be able to send out or coordinate with those who need to have a discussion, just send out a meeting invite, we can talk further, or Becky?
Sorry.
You want to set up a meeting?
Is that what you wanted to do, or you just wanted to email?
Question is, should we set up a meeting to discuss how to handle implementation grants, or should we handle it over email?
Well, our 2 rural localities are absent today, so if you're just talking about the 3 FAMPO jurisdictions that have a more robust local match, for us to organize a meeting, that makes sense, and perhaps invite Caroline and King George to attend that. They also have not, unless they got the TAC agenda. Let's chat. I hesitate to, I don't know how to.
There's nothing wrong with setting up a meeting. So if you all want a meeting, we will coordinate, send out a doodle poll or something and coordinate a meeting. There's no problems. We can do that for you. The one thing we must remember is that FAMPO cannot commit funds to an implementation grant on behalf of localities. You all will have to produce proof that you're providing the
You'll have a resolution.
the
from us.
implementation match funds for the federal grant. Otherwise, FAMPO or GWRC will say, hey, we're not going to coordinate the application because we don't have the funds to commit the local match. So you all have to provide evidence of the local match.
All right.
So
Conclusion,
20% local match, just recall.
the conclusion would be to set up a meeting with all 5 jurisdiction representatives.
If I could interject, you might want 2 different meetings because you might want a focused meeting on the 2 joint applications that are being sent in for Lafayette and Route 2, because they have a different funding mechanism for local match than the rural localities. And they have a different type of project, because rural localities might be interested in just doing a lot of paving on the rural roads, the corridors that you had suggested. Whereas these 2 localities want to do specific Lafayette and Route 2 and
Well,
different matches.
Maybe we have a meeting for the FAMPO localities and a meeting for the rural localities.
All right. We can figure that out. We will, endorsement of resolution 2422.
That's for the public comment.
For the public comment period, and then at the next meeting, we will, assuming there's nothing else, we'll move for approval and move to the policy committee.
A motion to approve?
All right, do I have a second?
Second.
All right, any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries. With that, we'll move on to item number 9, correspondence.
We have an additional item of correspondence that came in, so, do you want to just, Coley, do you want to just remind us?
I'll just remind what what was attached to the agenda was Chip Boyle's email about the George County legislation. These are correspondence on the policy committee agenda.
Yeah.
And then 2 letters of endorsement, I believe, for Route 3 corridor of statewide significance. Then we received the extra item. Connor, do you know how to pull that up?
Just pull up the extra item. Just while he's doing that, the 2 pieces of legislation for the King George to leave the GWRC. The first one in the Senate was deferred to effectively calendar year 25, so deferred for a year. The second one was withdrawn, I believe, by the applicant. So there's currently no legislation live any longer in the General Assembly for King George County to leave GWRC. It's not in the current year.
Oh, is this just the readiness email?
And this is the email we got from the head of VDOT, the Commissioner for Highways. And we just thought we should raise it. I don't know, Carrie, if you want to comment, but it's a fairly stern email, right? Basically says, you're all on your own. If I can be rude, I would say this is the throw you all under the bus email.
It is
Basically says,
we started this process late. Now you need to get your work done with a month left.
You're on your own, basically, is what this email says.
It's just reiterating that if you haven't already, if VDOT hasn't already started work on your project, like back in December when you put it in the portal, they're not going to start now.
Which
They're not
is,
going to give you any additional assistance.
which is why we were trying to make the deadline as early as possible because we knew, and I mean, we're running into issues now. We knew that this was going to be an issue, so we're gonna internally look at how we handled this round, and we're gonna be doing a lot of updates for next round. And it's gonna be, no matter what the CTB is doing, we're gonna have to have these things in earlier. We're gonna have to have discussions earlier. And at that point, it's not gonna matter what the CTB is trying to decide or what they're not trying to decide. We're going to have to start doing stuff earlier, because we also got some backlash on not starting this process earlier and being further ahead.
We were starting earlier than them.
That it's not just a matter of starting early, it's a matter, it's some of it, looking at the amount of effort that especially district staff have to take away from funded projects and working on designs of projects. So I don't know the next round if anything's going to change. As far as district, evaluate, the district, good to see. But as far as staff.
It raises the question, obviously, about VDOT vacancies. You lost a lot of engineers. What I'm saying is that it does raise questions about all the vacancies.
So I know I will not be TAC chair in August and September, but Paul, maybe this is a discussion for August and September about how we as a district in Fampo can do better to, as localities, support VDOT and VDOT support us. We're all the same understanding and can proceed with not as much stress over this process. So,
If we stop working on the projects that are funded.
Yeah.
In Stafford and in Spotsy and in the city and in Northumberland and in, around the district, that doesn't help either. So, we want to keep that whole pipeline of projects moving. And that's why the Terry's looking at it, if we can.
Yeah.
Have things looked at, just thought about earlier, of like, you could back your mind, oh, this is an area we know we need something, so this study, we're gonna look at this being a smart scale project.
and I think that makes sense, it's fine to start the process this fall. And start that process. I think Stafford, our goal is to have 2 studies ongoing into next year and take improvements from those 2 studies, and those will be our priorities, and we use those first. Plus anything that didn't work out this year. That'll save us a lot of time and effort, hopefully.
So I think this time, the state did the big kind of holistic look at smarts. That just thought, I think everyone was holding their breath. Seeing that before, finalizing smart scale plans, but the problem is when it slid so late. And really went into early January. That delayed the project development process. Now, I say next time, I would doubt the state would do such a big kind of effort like that, so.
Really hope not.
So we would hope- so I think that maybe things go a little bit faster, but.
Yes.
Something every cycle.
I'm gonna,
I understand it has to be earlier.
I'm gonna agree with Susan.
Been here.
There is a very strong possibility that they're gonna get really bad outcomes because they've changed so much stuff and they don't know the impact. What that means is there's a backlash. So I'm fully expecting a backlash after this round when all the money goes to the big, exactly. So all the money likely will go to Hampton Roads, Northern Virginia, and maybe Richmond, and then everybody will get angry. And then there'll be a backlash, and so then it's big work again. So I'm not so convinced that they're not gonna make changes. I know that you're.
That's why I'm saying.
My
no matter what.
comment though is that you're gonna hate my next comment, and that is that we have always started early in this region, always.
Yeah.
However, when the CTP throws the entire manual out of the window and starts again,
I know.
we can't commit to our projects earlier because what if, for example, next round, suddenly bike ped projects are the flavor of the month again,
Not that,
right?
it's more of projects that we would need to help with.
Yeah,
It's that's what we're gonna need commitment earlier, just because we can't be having like, oh, we've got 3 pipeline studies, we've got our STAR study, we have an A&P study, and then we've got all these smart scale projects. And we've got 3 people in planning. Well, when we get our 3rd person. And then, you know, we're putting a lot of stress on our L&D folk, we're putting stress on our traffic engineering group and everything, so we've got 3 groups now that we're putting a significant amount of stress on. We need to keep doing other stuff, so,
You need to fill your vacancies.
I mean, we have only
it's not,
We are, I mean, yeah, we've been so long.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, you know, different districts have supported their localities.
very different.
So let me give you a scenario of what's likely to happen.
mhm.
They're gonna throw the book out again and change it all.
Oh, I
So-
see.
It's gonna be late. We're gonna tell you the same thing. We can't finalize our list until they tell us what's eligible.
And I'm gonna put.
And you're not gonna fill your vacancies. You're gonna be short staffed. You're gonna tell us the same shit all over
I'm
again.
gonna fill
Excuse my language.
I'm going to fill my vacancy.
Yeah.
The district.
Her
the
vacancy is
district.
a little bit easier to fill than the
I'm talking
other
about the
vacancies.
district. We're gonna have the same discussion all over again in January.
But yes, it will be,
But it also helps, if you
Yes.
commit to a project, and then the counties do a little bit of more homework.
Exactly.
And do a little bit more prep work before we get to putting in an application, and we have a little bit. Instead of us getting this project and we got 5 scenarios on one project, that doesn't work here.
Yeah.
When these guys get that, they need to have, this is what we want, this is what's gonna solve our problem, this is what we need done. And then the staff can start working on that. But when we come in there, and we got 5 different scenarios on how to solve one problem. It's gonna take these guys forever to solve that, to where it's down to an application. So I encourage everyone in the localities, please pinpoint what you want
So,
to help with the transportation process.
so Carrie's about to talk to you now because we are working on
Yeah. So if we want to move
establishing
the staff.
priorities. Now, like next month, have a list of priorities for pipeline studies already now.
Yeah.
Which we're gonna suggest to VDOT to be the recommended proposals. We've got, but Carrie, I'm gonna not steal your thunder.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, yeah, so staff reports. So, the last time.
Yes.
One before that. So we were talking, VDOT and I were talking at the last staff meeting about pipeline projects
mhm.
and how we could all work together better about that. And I put out a call to all the localities. What are your priority locations? I got a good list from Stafford and I got a good list from Spotsylvania to start discussing. I need a list from Fredericksburg and then from the 2 rural localities. Next, pretty soon, because by the next staff meeting, I'd like to have a presentation and an agenda item to talk about our priorities as region. And to whittle down, because these were big lists I got from you guys. So we need to start discussing and whittling down these study areas. So we can start thinking about what your priorities are, pass these along to VDOT, VDOT can pass them along to the state. We can start getting really on.
I'll say I have talked with Steven and Cassie, to a point as well about every single thing that I listed on that list.
Okay.
So
Good.
have that process, and then what we're gonna do is we're gonna prioritize that internally, and we'd like to move forward with 2 of those. Those 2 will look at, they'll come up with which projects, and those are the projects we submit for next round of Smart Scale.
So that's what the plan is for next meeting, is to have a list from all the localities on the screen, and then we can talk about them, narrow it down to some that are doable. We'll give you those in March so that you can talk to the people at Whiteby and
Well, Marcy has to basically, any studies that we do, Marcy we have to get the AOK from her first.
One thing, kind of a question and comment, I do not like pipeline studies because they come up with, their original goal was come up with one improvement and they do it right at the end, and, doesn't even have cost estimates yet, so just,
They
they
give
can
it-
be any better, I know that's not up to us.
Feedback we'd like to give to OIB.
We
I will-
love that.
You know, I'd like to begin that process much earlier.
Yeah.
So that you have some more real data.
So,
We have-
Carrie,
There are so many
Let's
comments we would like to give to OIB.
let's do this. And Ian and Carrie, correct me, we should do this differently, but if everyone has feedback on how we can do this process better,
Mm,
have that as a part of our agenda item when we talk about pipeline stars.
Mhm.
That is my one comment, but we write up a letter
mm.
and we have that go to the policy committee and we send that.
I think that's a good idea. One of the things that irritates
And we
me-
give them, just hold on, we give them what we think the schedule should be.
Yeah.
We say, we want to start the date at this time. So we tell them, they don't have to figure it out for themselves. We tell them this is exactly how we want, this is how we want Smart Skill to go, so it works for us and everyone else.
What irritates me also is that they set aside $10 to fix an entire corridor's problem. And then halfway through the study, they say, oh no, we're cutting the budget to $5.
Mhm.
And $10 wasn't even enough to do the study. Like Route 3 is a primary example.
So,
OIP's made a complete mess of that study, not just the consultant, OIP's made a
I
mess.
mean, we did have a meeting for the Route 3 study on Friday with OIP and the consultant. So they're allowing us to continue on with phase 3 of the pipeline study, even though everything will not be submitted till round 7. If anything gets chosen, it would be round 7. And we had that discussion with them and everything. So they are understanding, and that one's probably the timeline for that one will kind of be removed from the constraints of round 6 for smart scale. I'm gonna be actually having a discussion with the consultant later today and everything. So that one, it might go a little longer because basically, obviously, the low hanging fruit has all been done for Route 3 in that area, as Kathy put it. And
That's true.
We need real solutions, and I don't object to the idea of what they proposed, if that works fine, but they need to vet it. And they need to fully flesh out what it's gonna cost.
Land
and what
takes.
the impacts are,
Right.
and I feel like what they provided was not realistic, and that doesn't help any of us, so, you know, I don't think it's a bad thing to study that area and to say, okay, if you wanna fix it, we feel like this is the fix and this is what it costs. And, you know, let's just be very upfront about that. I think the consultant had the, understanding that the pipelines were supposed to be low to medium cost projects. And I think talking with them and with Boyd, we were like, those don't, this summer, really, like, hopefully have been done on something more difficult for, so.
You're completely correct, and if I can sort of interject, the frustration for me is that on the other end of the scale, the CTB changes the mechanism and they now emphasize colossally big projects.
Right.
But OIB has been pegging the pipeline studies as small interventions, and those two things don't add up, and they have to add up, and if they don't add up, what are we doing,
Well,
right?
that is how I got the flyover added back in to the Route 3 study, because they were initially going to make us take it out. And I was like, wait, you wanna redefine HPP, and it's supposed to be these huge projects. I'm like, so why should my pipeline study not have a huge project in it? So, I mean, I understand that and I agree with it. So, I mean, we pushed back on Route
Good,
3.
thank you.
They were trying to kind of cool it down more.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And,
That's very helpful, because there is a disconnect. The CTB is going here and OIB's pipeline studies are going here, and we've got to try and bring them together, otherwise,
I feel like that should be the comment for the letter and
Yeah.
everything.
yeah.
Where we are with the pipeline studies and, we got full stuff on Friday that we're like, we didn't see that for round 1.
Yeah, there were some, things within the pipeline that we could or should have gotten that I don't think we get with round 1. And if we can have higher level of, even if we're gonna call them plans, you know, if we maybe go a little bit past a concept, you know, let's get that. If that's what we're told we can get, then let's get it. And, so those were some things that were different than what we've been seeing. So again, we're just trying to, we're gonna spend the time and money to do the study, then let's get some.
Right, because I don't want to have to come back and wait for another pipeline spot on Route 3 if we can get something out of this one.
I'd rather do 2 studies and get some really big, great projects out of them than doing 5 or 6 studies and then they're all like an intersection improvement, which they won't fund it. It's just pointless.
I don't want to be too down on the idea of the study, because I think if we actually got what they told us we're supposed to get, and that would be wonderful. So I think we ideas of ways we can improve, because I don't want them to just throw it out and go, well, people aren't gonna even use it, then we're not gonna do it next time. No, we need to
Yeah.
study things,
So-
we need that. It can be great.
Yeah, one, I guess, question, is money an issue in terms of doing studies, or is that?
Big study. And I.
Because I know they
wish I
give you,
had an
they don't
answer.
give you a budget, they give you, you can do this many studies.
They identified the study, but then the thing that was new to me from Friday was that there is, chapter 3. I think
Yeah,
it's phase chapter something.
Phase chapter 3.
So chapter 3, they talked about actually sort of transitioning that pipelines from that planning team
L&D.
and then using the L&D team. So going to the L&D on call, and that's when it's like, maybe we need to get some survey, maybe we need to get 30% plans on something, 30% plans on whatever it would be.
So, I guess, well,
But we never saw that for the first one.
Yeah.
So then, so my question to was, we have an on-call that we can tap, but I don't have any funding
Right.
for that. And they had some funding, but I would assume that there is a cap on that funding.
Yeah.
I don't have any
Okay.
idea how much it is, so I wish I had an answer for you. I don't.
that is the exact answer that I was looking for, just to make the comment to TAC. We have STBG funding, it can be used for studies, perhaps that is a mechanism, we set aside an amount. Each locality uses that funding with FANFO to do smart scale application support that is outside of what VDOT can do with the existing studies we're doing. Just to make the process easier. I know that scared you, I just,
No, it doesn't scare me. It's like, sure, if you want to put all your SDGB money into studies,
I mean, my board may not agree, but that is to a point, yeah.
it's your roadway money. So if you want to give it to studies, hey, go ahead.
Yeah,
Sorry.
there's a lot of stuff that we can be doing better, and if it's just money is the issue, we can figure that
Well,
out
it's
too.
not just money, it's resources, people. We
Yeah.
just don't have even the consultants don't have the engineers and
Yeah.
planners that they need to get these studies done.
Yeah.
It's fine, you got all that money, but if you can't find anybody to do the work,
Yes,
I mean, come on, I came from tech.
that's the problem. And
Yeah.
honestly, that is like across the board we're having, is we have tapped every engineer in all states. And we're just, they're even backlogged now.
yeah,
Our consultants are asking for more work.
yeah, ours are as
Can I
well.
give you some phone numbers?
God.
Can I give you some phone numbers?
All right, we will cap that discussion. It'll be on our agenda for the next TAC meeting. We'll move on.
Finish staff reports and then
Yeah.
move on to member reports. So there's these 2 letters. These are these annual letters that we do. Becky, do you want to talk to them?
Yes,
Right.
safety performance target.
What I call-
FAMPO adopts the state's Fredericksburg District Safety Performance Targets. The second item is the annual MPO planning process self-certification statement, and that will be sent to the appropriate individuals that are supposed to get it. And that's, we only do the performance system safety targets every 5 years, because it's a 5-year target, so you just see these annually.
So, it's an administrative thing, but you need to agree to what we're doing. Yeah, we're just adopting the state targets, right?
Yeah, for the Fredericksburg district.
If 1 year you decide you don't want to do that, then this is your time to say it. But if we don't hear from anybody, we're gonna just send this letter that says we adopted the state target.
It had to be approved by the policy committee.
No, it's strange. In this particular case, I have to sign this letter.
Okay.
But I don't do it in the dark. I bring it to you all before I send it anywhere so that you all know what's going on and you can voice your disagreement if you.
Unless anyone has a disagreement, then that's all good. We'll move on to the next item, staff reports.
We have finished with staff reports. Just to introduce,
MPO
oh,
sub-certification
she's
process.
left already, never mind.
Sub-certification process.
That's what we
Oh,
just went
never
through,
mind.
so member
Thought we
reports, I
took it
guess,
over.
is the next.
Anybody have any member reports?
I do. So we brought this up to Pampo staff, but wanted to share it in this venue as well. For the last several years, GBRI staff have been conducting park and ride lot counts. Sometimes we do this on behalf of Pampo at VDOT's request, like we do the rural park and ride lot count on your behalf. We have recently learned from DRPT that they will no longer fund that staff time through our DRPT grants. Currently, GBRI Connect is solely funded through those DRPT grants, which basically means we can no longer do those counts. Unless we were to have another funding source to pay for our time to do those counts, I think that would be something that would have to be done by Pampo staff. We are slated to start receiving CMAQ funding in FY27, so we're looking forward to that. But in the interim period, we don't have a funding source that can pay for time for items that are not eligible under our DRPT grants. We have adopted our new strategic plan, and one of our priorities in that plan is to diversify our funding for this very reason. We don't want to be boxed in because we only have one source of funding and we have to follow the rules that apply to that funding. So again, we're looking forward to having access to the CMAQ in FY27. I think that will give us more flexibility once we reach that point. But in the meantime, unless there were to be another source of funding to fund our time, that's something that we supposed to do.
So you're saying no traffic counts between now and FY27?
Do you know the approximate cost you'd need to continue that service annually?
I guess it depends on how many counts we're doing. I think the rural park and ride lot count is an annual thing. So just once a year, but I think we've gotten requests from localities here and there to do the counts. So I can get with Lee and give you a little bit more information on like how many times we've been doing that. I don't think it's a large dollar amount. It takes staff, just the time to drive out there, drive through the lot, count, and come back.
That'd be good to know the dollar amount.
And then produce spreadsheets and reports and.
Right. Yeah, so yeah, that can be my action item, to get a little bit more detail, but it also just depends on, requests that we receive throughout the year, which we may or may not know about.
And DRPT also doesn't fund computers anymore.
Correct. We did use
So if you-
funding to buy computers, so thank you all for advancing us the money for that.
But if a computer breaks again, you don't have funding for that.
All right, any other member reports?
So I just want to talk a little bit about the V-Trans needs. I forgot to bring this up during the smart scale discussion, so. I did look at it, there are some differences. I'll say in Stafford was a lot in the 2021, that's not in the 2023. Now I'll say basically for this round of smart scale, they're still using the 2021, so the changes maybe don't matter so much. But for next round, they might, so you might want to just take a look at that. It looks like for Spotsylvania, for whatever reason, they didn't change as much as Stafford, but we are gonna look at that maybe next.
I know the UDA needs are still up for interpretation in Stafford, but the other stuff is, so I'll have to look into that. The one thing I did look into, they did not change their methodology for doing corridor of statewide significance or regional networks for congestion. So it only includes, the major roadways in Stafford being Route 17, Route 3, Route 1, and I-95. So even if we may have congestion needs on any of those other roads, they are not included because the data, according to OIP, does not exist. It does, but
Garrisonville Road?
yes, does not have any congestion needs according to V-Trans because of their data source.
Pointed out to him that they could use other
There's a readily available source. Yeah.
of collecting data for roads that are not covered under that program, and they basically told me that that program, it works perfectly. And has
So that's another letter to send.
Well, no, maybe we combine it all in one letter, because
Yeah.
100 different letters,
But yeah, and And
Okay.
then I didn't know if you wanted to talk any more about the V-Trans.
Can we just clarify that for this letter that we're gonna produce by next TAC meeting, things that you want in the letter, you need to tell us about.
Yeah, beforehand, not at the TAC meeting.
Exactly, because we need to work on a draft. So looking at,
Deadline,
who am I looking at? Becky?
it's Friday.
Yeah, if you can, in the next week, say, give us things that you want in this letter about smart scale or V-Trans needs. That's what we're gonna put in the letter. But what should the letter say? If you have, try to keep it short, like bullet points. This one and this one should be in the letter. We don't need a long sermon from you, just a,
So can you guys send out an email just saying, please send us comments for the letter by X date?
And everybody should hit reply all, so everybody else can see what's.
Yes.
and then we'll put a draft, or we'll bring it here, and then you can fiddle with the draft if you want to change it.
Did you see that they're using 2021, so?
I know they are.
No, I know.
Oh.
It's in there.
I see that now, but like, where did you read it? Cause I wasn't able to find that.
Yeah, it was, and it was on one of the websites,
It's in the,
Cassie might know where it is.
it's in the original email.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah, one of the
I remember all
paragraphs.
the
of where it
2022
says-
needs, and I did see some changes I was concerned about.
Yeah, no, and
Might
We've
be on the
made-
initial email too, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's good.
we've also been told,
Good.
I think when they did the updated, when, we did that, meeting packet, what, so December, I think, or November? They had that meeting, they stated that would be 2021 and 2023.
Okay, they're both good. Okay.
But they also have told us that numerous times and everything.
Yeah, projects and programs that address the 2023 and 2021, the previous version, V-Trans midterm needs to be eligible for the next round of smart scale.
Yeah, I just wrote the details here.
Thanks.
Any other member reports? Just on Stafford, we're working on a transportation master plan that'll be presented to our board in the next month or so. And for future smart scale stuff and studies, that's where all of that comes from, is our master plan. So,
Just to point out those two bullet points under memo reports, 11A and B. I mean, this hasn't really worked very well, but the attempt was to try to find out, first of all, when you have developer run projects or revenue sharing projects that we don't necessarily know about, this is kind of meant to be for you to let us know. Maybe there's a better way to do it. This was just the first attempt to try and find out information about projects that we don't know about. If they're not in our tip, if they're not in the, whatever else, we don't always find out about projects. And when the cost estimate changes, we don't know that suddenly now $100,000 needs to be found somewhere until a locality comes and says, hey, this project is a problem.
I'll work with Kathy to, because I know since Michelle left, you haven't been getting that, so I'll work with Kathy, but she wasn't there for that, sending that information over to us.
Thank you.
No problem.
you had one more?
So I just wanted to ask about the route three. Any response from the state?
Yes, so if you watched CTB meeting, I chatted to our CTB member beforehand and she raised it in the CTB meeting and put OIP on the spot, actually. And that was the right thing to do, and it was great. And OIP responded, and they said in the meeting that they've received the application and that they're studying it. And the Secretary for Transportation and OIP both said, yes, we're studying it. And the reason they're studying it, according to them, is that they're trying to determine whether the whole of Route 3 should be considered a corridor of statewide significance or only a portion of it. And so they're studying the data to come up with an answer to that question. And that's what they said in the meeting in January. So
There didn't seem to be anything against it.
there was no visceral response by anybody to say, oh no, this is a bad idea. But our CTB member then said, don't forget, even though the Northern Neck might not have the volumes that you have in Spotsylvania, they are landlocked because they have water on three sides. So maybe they should really consider this corridor as being an important one for the whole route, right, end to end of Route 3. But we don't know what will happen. But I'm glad she just put them like on the spot in the meeting, that they couldn't just escape, like, oh, we don't know anything about this. They acknowledge they've got it.
I have an email from Jatinder also that they have basically the stuff that you sent them, the letters of support and everything, so. I at least have that it should be on their radar now where they're at with it. I have no idea. Supposedly, if they need anything from our district and everything, they'll reach out to us, so. Obviously, they haven't at this point, and I don't know, because it's.
I suspect that if nothing happens for a month or two, our CDB member will ask again if the CDB needed. Anyway, because I think that's the way to do it. And they have received further letters since the
I
beginning.
think Culpeper County.
Yep.
Sent a letter,
And Richmond County.
Orange County. Yeah.
I'm just not sure the Richmond County letter has gone to OIP and the CTB. It was sent to us. And I think I'm gonna get with you after this meeting. I think we just should send a courtesy copy through because we are unclear as to whether it went there as well.
Alright, I guess just one thing on new transportation projects, Susan or Kathy, revenue sharing. Sounds good.
Yeah,
All right.
I think it's gonna be,
it's usually around April,
yeah.
the same time we're waiting for. Oh,
Yeah,
But
we,
it is
everything
usually
else.
around April.
Well, maybe
Alright.
after that, somebody can just give us a list of the roads, right? Or
Yeah.
something, so that we at least
Our-
know there's.
Our
new
revenue
projects.
sharing will be Onville Road and Garrison Road, which are already existing.
Okay, you can let us know in April or whenever.
Alright, anything else under member reports? If not, we'll move on to item number 12, adjournment. Our next TAC meeting is March 4th, 2024 at 9:30.